Hearing none, that is moved. Moving on to the Administrative Committee, item number 1 is an update presentation on the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Center. Mr. Walker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, in your packet is an update report that I guess Ms. Holmes is going to provide, and it's in your packet. She's got a PowerPoint. Also, is at the last meeting, we've also provided the breakout of the 3 sources of funding that had been allocated for this project over the last several years, and in the budget director, the Sea Turtle people, and our clerk's finance have kind of gotten the numbers to make sure that they're all in the right place, and that we've properly allocated the funds, or accounted for the funds that were allocated.
Good morning, Ms. Holmes. Good morning.
There you go.
Kathy Holmes, 3525 Ginger Lane, Navarre, Florida.
Henry Tyler, 8661 Bay River Road, Navarre, Florida.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for allowing us to present and give you updates on the Sea Turtle Conservation Center. I would especially like to thank Commissioner J.R. Williamson for inviting us last week to say we have us here so we can tell our side of the story and what's going on out there. So what we're going to start with is a progress report, or a PowerPoint, and when we go through this, you'll be able to see that a lot has happened since we signed our lease in 2012, October 31st of 2012, and the progress has been accomplished through amazing public support, donors, sponsors, local businesses, and people that believe in our mission and want to support us in our mission. The first thing that we've got up here is pretty much the building with the fence that holds all the filtration equipment, which is state-of-the-art filtration equipment for all of our sea turtle pools and our main exhibit pool. And we have, you can see the addition that's on the other side on the east end there. I won't read all the points. I think you all can see that. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, next slide. This was the main exhibit pool that we had, which is an inside pool. It was made to Florida Fish and Wildlife standards to accommodate large turtles that cannot be released back into the wild due to injuries or medical conditions that they might have. We've got the railing around there. We made sure that everything we did, we talked to the planning people, to the permitting people, and had everything ADA compliance was something that was in the forefront of our planning all along the way. Little look at our filtration systems there, just to give you a heads up that for sea turtles, you have to have a lot of filtration and a lot of clean water to meet Florida Fish and Wildlife standards. This is part of our interpretive area, some of the signs that have already gone up. We have partnered closely with the Marine Sanctuary on a couple different things. Our Clear Bottom Kayak Tours are an amazing success. In fact, Mike and Nancy had a group out yesterday. And our interpretive center focuses on local. We're trying to keep everything very local, very Navarre, to fit in with the Santa Rosa County's ecotourism theme and the Florida playground. So right now we're doing a great job of that, I think. Just some more of the exhibits that are going in. Has to do with turtles, our beaches, our beautiful white sand, Gulf of Mexico. Conservation. I did want to talk a little bit about conservation versus education and how the two cannot be separated out. Conservation is education, it's research, it's individual involvement, it's getting the word out to people that might not know about beach trash and clean water and sea turtles nesting. And so that's what we do. And as far as our education efforts go, they consist of community programs and curriculum enhancements for schools that request our programs in class, in residence, and we do have those from kindergartner all the way to the colleges. And our curriculum was designed off of Loggerhead Marine Life Center curriculum that in Juno Beach, and it is Sunshine Standard compliant. And one thing that I kind of wanted to clarify is it came to our attention, and it was in the community, that we were going to be hiring teachers for our facility. I think it's really important for the public to understand that all of our programs were designed so that volunteers and docents and staff would be able to conduct the programs that we're having at the facility. So that doesn't mean that there wouldn't ever be a teacher there, but we are continuing just to work closely to provide the support to the schools when they ask it. Okay, so it's not a facility that's set up to have teachers in it. Okay? We have partnered research already going on, even though we haven't opened our doors. One of the great things that are happening on our beach right now is a data logger project that is measuring our beach temperatures to determine what kind of turtles we get. What do we get? Do we get more females? Do we get more males? What are we getting on Navarre Beach? And at this point, we have 4 nests on Navarre Beach, and this morning we had a very large green sea turtle that came up and was checking everything out, did a couple false crawls, but she did not nest. So we're getting some nests out there, and we're excited about that. That's okay, that's fine. Go next. Go next. The partnered research that we're doing with the diamondback terrapins is another unique reptile that we have on Navarre Beach. A lot of people see them, they end up on the Gulf side, but we're partnering with Dr. Andrew Coleman and some folks out of the Audubon Society to do some tracking on these guys also, since they're out there. And it's a species of interest. And that's it for the slides, just a brief overview. And just wanting again to say that in the conservation fields, that we're preserving and we are protecting something that's of value. And in our case, it's sea turtles and it's our marine environment right in this area. Our goal is to get the message across to people that one person, one individual, it does make a difference. It doesn't matter if you're the little kid that's out on the beach filling in the holes because you found out about turtles falling into holes, or if it's an adult that's in from Wisconsin that's never seen a sea turtle and is watching a hatching event. It's important for people to know one person does make a difference. And just based on the PowerPoint, that's just a small, we didn't get all the pictures of the interpretive center and everything, but it's going to be an amazing facility, not just for our community residents and school children, but also for any visitors that come in, and most of all for our turtles that will be our ambassadors to, again, bring the conservation message home. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to do questions, comments, anything on that.
Commissioner Cole?
Thank you very much. Appreciate the update on that. It's nice to know that we had a part in getting this thing off the ground. Have you videoed or taken any pictures of them as they hatch?
Yes.
And also
One
that.
of our displays. Again, sorry. One of our displays in the facility will have a monitor that shows the local turtles, a loggerhead nesting on the beach, hatching events that have happened on the beach, and also some very beautiful footage from the artificial reef systems, because we are getting a lot of turtle activity out there on those reefs, larger turtles.
And who is keeping track of, I would hope that with all these efforts, you see an increase in population of all these turtle species. Or is there a national organization, or do you work together with anybody to watch the counts on these?
Yes, sir, there is. What we do is every time we have a nest, we have to do detailed paperwork and a report survey that goes to FWC. FWC tracks every nest, every hatching event. We're actually participating in a population study. We started it last year with Fish and Wildlife, that we track the productivity of each nest, how many hatchlings we are getting out of the nest. We can't do anything once they're in the Gulf, but it's important for them to track the how many we're getting out of our nest. And even nests, because Navarre Beach is narrow, Navarre Beach is very dynamic, so it can change very quickly. Within 48 hours, you have a beach where you can do your patrol all the way down, and 2 days later, you're backtracking because there's no beach. So the turtles that we actually get on our beach are very important because they overcome some odds and obstacles that might not occur on other beaches that don't have the same issues going on. So our population studies happening this year also.
Right, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming to the meeting. Somebody that's in the, we represent all of the county, and of course I'm in the Pace District, but knowing what's going on down in Navarre and what's going on with the sea turtle conservation that you have, it was good to have a broad overview. But from a money standpoint, or from a dollar standpoint, what's the vision that you have for the conservation here in the future, and what type of funding is that going to take? Is it money that you're going to apply for other grants for? Is it something that you'll be coming in front of the board to ask? Restore? I mean, where are you going as far as funding sources? I know you said private donors, but kind of an overall view of the next few years, what are we looking like?
You want to address that?
You address that. I'll address the other problem.
Okay. Once we are open, we will be a self-sustaining facility. We will continue to apply for grants. We have 2 grants that are actually due today. And I think just with the facility alone, the money that will be coming in will be more than enough to be a self-sustaining facility. I do not anticipate coming back to the Board of County Commissioners for any more county money. That was the one-time startup amount that we had requested. And I think TDC, as far as TDC funding, would also be very limited and only be requested if it was something very special or out of the ordinary where we needed a little assistance. But we will be a self-sustaining facility.
Okay. And to the budget director, there were some questions last meeting about some of the financials and if all the money was accounted for and from the right pot of money. I mean, do we feel confident in all of the numbers that you've sent us through email and in our backup documentation that everything is accounted for and properly?
Yes, sir. I'm very, very confident it is. We've spent many hours. It's been a forensic effort, but I am confident that these numbers are now good, so, and complete.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Commissioner Rob Williamson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for coming here today. First of all, I wanted to make sure that sometimes what's said and what's heard are 2 totally different things. I am in support of your efforts. I've communicated that to you, Ms. Holmes, long before I was elected and since. You know, one of the things that upon taking this office, I called for a meeting and tried to get an idea of the projects that I had inherited that had come before to make sure that I had an understanding of where these projects are, how much money's being spent on them, and where we are in the process. So if asked about them, I could communicate where we are on those. Pretty reasonable request. We had a meeting December 2nd. I also had meetings related to the other projects that I inherited, whether it be the median beautification effort or the Navarre Park restroom or Marine Science Station. These were all projects that were in different stages of completion. From the outset, this has been about fairness. This hasn't been about the Turtle Center. This has never just been about the Turtle Center. I didn't ask these questions of just the Turtle Center. I asked them of all of these projects that I inherited. The reason that we're here now is because from the meeting on December 2nd, I received no communication until December 24th, where I sent a follow-up email asking, hey, where are we on the project? Where are we on the questions that I'd asked in the meeting, which were, what was allocated in these 3 different funding sources? And I even clarified, hey, this is a question that Jane and and Kathy would answer. And then I asked, what was the additional amount? Give me a timeline and the costs associated with what we have left to finish this project. And that's not something that the county can tell y'all what your timeline is and what the costs are going to be. That's something that you have to tell the county. Now, yes, when you submit invoices to the county for payment, that's when it's on us. Those get coded into these 3 different buckets, if you will, of funding. We had a $60,000 grant, we had a $165,000 District 4 Rec Fund amount, and then we had the latest one, which was the $43,915, which was kind of a shared grant award. Once the invoices get submitted and we pay off of those invoices, it's our responsibility to have a clear accounting of those and how much is remaining. But the progress of the project is yours. And the only reason that I started to get a little bit concerned was you couldn't get a clear answer on where we were, the funding amounts changing, and that's an internal issue. That's not an issue with the Turtle Center. What was an issue with the Turtle Center is why we couldn't get, and still haven't received until recently, the timeline of what are the associated costs and where are they being coded to. This is what we have left in the project, and this one is going to go to the $60,000 grant, and this goes to the rec fund for the building, and this one goes to the $43,915 grant. I wasn't able to get that. So after 7 months, I took the only action that I knew to take when we had a budget amendment come before us, which, based on the information I had, asked for more money than we had in the account. It asked for an 8135 budget amendment, and by the numbers that I had received from our Office of Management and Budget, we only had $7,600 remaining. That's why I asked that we suspend any future payments until we get a clear accounting. Now, I'd like to ask, if I could, just about the most recent grant award, the $43,915, because that one sets forth very specific dollar amounts that are going to go to very specific buckets of funding, if you will. So Jane was nice enough to forward this on, and this was the Beaches to Rivers grant request. And it lays out very specifically what the money was going to be spent on. I'm curious, it sets forth in here for things like the kayak tours. You mentioned those have been a big success, and I know that we've gone ahead and purchased the kayaks, $5,200 for that, and then it breaks down the other stuff for field guides, $1,740, and specialty areas, and on and on. I had asked if we could get a accounting on, of these specific buckets of funding, what has been applied toward each respective bucket so we know what's left. That's the only information that I'm holding on right now. Would be, let's say, for the field guides, where we have $1,740 was requested for that portion. Have we spent $1,000? Have we spent the full $1,740? Where are we on that request? The same thing for the other ones that are listed there. The $60,000 grant request and the $165, I'm willing to say, I get it. We were probably overdrawn on the $60,000 request, and now we're going to take some of the funds that were originally paid to the architect, and we're going to pay for those with the District 4 rec funds. Fine. I completely understand that. The District 4 rec funds were supposed to be used for the building. You sure can't build a building without an architect, so we're fine with that. It would have been nice had I received that information initially, instead of we had to suspend payments and then we get, well, this is how we're going to zero that out. So coming back to the $43,915, I'm curious, with what y'all are applying for and the conservation work that you're going to be doing, will you be allowed to do any rescue or rehabilitation of turtles?
We're already doing rescue of turtles. We're on the stranding network and salvage permit. We've already conducted on Navarre Beach alone 7 rescues. We are not set up yet right now for rehabilitation, so those turtles go to the Gulfarium. At some point in the future, FWC has sent an email that will be something that will be discussed in the future. As far as the rescue right now, it's already happening, and it has been for a long time.
So you're permitted to do rescuing of turtles. So
Yes.
we can take turtles, once the center is open, you'll be able to transport, like I saw the great work that y'all did on the one that was just caught in the fishing net there at the pier. Once the center is open, you would be able to transport that turtle back to this turtle center and perform first aid to it until the Gulfarium could come pick it up. You could transport the turtle?
In the last several turtles that we've had, including that very large one that you saw the picture on, we have held the turtle overnight, coordinated with FWC and coordinated with Alan at the Gulfarium to transport the turtle the following morning. So yes, we are holding turtles.
You're holding them at the conservation center?
We can
You brought
hold
them to
them
that building?
at the center, or we can hold them in our house. It all depends on what time of the day we do that rescue.
Okay, so the
It is
permit...
legal either, if you're asking if it's legal to hold them at the center, the answer is correct.
It is? Okay.
We can hold them there or in our homes.
So the permit that y'all have now, are you speaking of the permit that is part of the one that George Gray holds?
Yes.
Or is this separate from that?
This is the
The
one
Turtle
that
Patrol?
George Gray holds that covers all the turtle nesting surveys, the turtle hatching events, the monitoring of the nest, the paperwork, and the stranding and salvage.
Okay. Just for my fellow board members, if you're not aware, there's a gentleman by the name of George Gray in Destin that applied for the permit with Fish and Wildlife, and there are 24 designees as listed on that permit. Those 24 individuals are the ones that would be allowed to even touch a turtle. And of those 24, we probably have maybe almost half, right?
We have a
Here?
lot, yeah.
And you've been doing this turtle patrol for a long time. That's how this started. I just wanted to make sure that I have an understanding that the permit, I wasn't aware that the permit allowed for any first aid or any rehabilitation of turtles or even the transporting of turtles, that basically the Gulfarium was the one that was allowed to do that. Y'all could do the patrol, and if there was one that you identified, then you would pretty much handle it the way you did at the pier, where you could call for help, but that's not a service that we can provide.
No, that's not accurate. The Gulfarium, in fact, we have never had them pick up a turtle. We have always coordinated with them, and if Alan, who is the head of the sea turtle program over there, we do an over-the-phone triage type report. He gets pictures, he asks questions, we give him the medical side of it as far as what we're seeing on our end, and then if he determines that something needs to be done with the turtle, either, if it's after hours, most of the time we hold them. And
Okay.
he will tell us what he would like us to do with the turtle while we're holding him,
Fair enough.
okay? If it's during the day, what is best for the turtle always comes first. So when that turtle is rescued, it is transported in the best possible way, which is inside a vehicle or inside a covered, climate-controlled vehicle to the Gulfarium. They prepare, because we're coordinating along the way, they prepare to receive that turtle.
The permit that y'all will be applying for once this project is complete is an education-based permit?
It is. It's a permit to hold non-releasable residential sea turtles for right now. Our mission in the beginning was rescue, rehab, release. That mission changed for a number of reasons, and I would be happy to explain that if you all are interested in knowing how that mission changed up.
Sure.
Okay. So what happened was, we are very unusual in the Panhandle in the fact that we have our small conservation center on Navarre Beach. We have the Gulfarium on Okaloosa Island, And then we have Gulf World in Panama City. Gulf World and the Gulfarium both do rehab. However, they normally do not hold turtles that are non-releasable. Those turtles, I think the Gulfarium does have a few right now, but for the most part, the turtles that cannot be released, they go to other facilities. When we spoke to FWC about the permitting process, what they said is, we have more turtles that need permanent homes than we have turtles that need rehab, because we have rehab facilities. We would like you to start with being a sanctuary, being the place where if we have turtles that need to go somewhere, we'd bring them to you. That actually was in the Navarre Press. They did an amazing job 2 weeks ago on just the construction, and they actually called Megan Kapersky, who is the head of the FWC Sea Turtle Permitting Division, and that's what she said. She said the same thing.
So initially, it was a rescue rehab center, and then because of the extraordinary need that was identified by Fish and Wildlife to have non-releasable turtles, have a place for them, you decided to switch gears and make it more of an education-based facility that could house these non-releasable turtles.
Yes. And also the close proximity of the Gulfarium and Gulf World with those two facilities doing rehab already. Now, Robin Trindell, who is also in that sea turtle division, said things like that would be discussed in the future when we're
Okay.
referring to rehab and things like that.
If they wanted to allow another facility. Right now, the Gulfarium is the only one that can perform that.
Yeah, they're the closest one right now.
How many
Only-
turtles could you house in, how many non-releasable turtles can we have at the facility
In that
that is
pool?
almost complete?
In that pool that
Yes,
is
ma'am.
complete, it will be dependent on what we choose. Once we do our permitting, FWC will allow us to choose which turtles want to come to us. So if we're talking small turtles, we could have a few in there, because the pool is designed with the carrying capacity, the surface area, the depth, the filtration. It's designed to actually house 2 adult green sea turtles, which are very large turtles.
The permit would allow for a maximum of how many non-releasable turtles to be held at that facility? It's
can't-
3, correct?
I can't answer that question. That's through
It's
Florida
3.
Fish and Wildlife.
I
And
think
it
the
also,
permit provides for 3 non-releasable turtles at that facility. Based on the size of the shell, you have to have a
Correct.
tank that would be a certain size. So if
And
we're
you-
talking mature turtles, we're probably talking maybe 1 mature and 1 smaller one, but the most we could fit in there would be 3.
depending on species. You're talking about different sized turtles, and when you get a turtle in, if we would get a turtle that came in as a juvenile turtle, a small turtle, we would keep that turtle through adulthood until that turtle died.
Okay, I'm just going on what I read about the permit, said that if you have this education-based permit that you will be applying for. Have you applied for the permit yet?
You cannot apply for the permit until the facility is completed and ready to open to the public. At
Okay.
that time, I would imagine it would be Megan Kapersky, but it could be someone else, will come and they will do the inspection. They will inspect all of our filtration, the pool, make sure our water quality standards are where they need to be. They will also check the entire facility. They've already been coordinating with the people that are doing the interpretive design of the facility to ensure that everything we're putting on our walls and in our displays is indeed accurate when it comes to sea turtles and other animal and plant life on the
I
beach.
saw the pictures, it looks great. What's the time it's going to take from the building gets complete and you apply for the permit? How long does that process take for the permit to be approved? Or they give you some comments on, hey, you need to do these couple of things and then we'll approve it? What's the average time that it takes?
They have up to 90 days to respond, but that 90-day window is based on if they've got a lot of applications from a bunch of different.
Sure, but the
Okay,
average time is about 90 days.
90 days to review.
Okay. So,
Oh, let me add one more thing, please. The facility also, the pool has to be actually up and running and going through all of the filtration systems for 2 weeks before they'll even come out. So that pool will already be in that process and be done before, that'll start as soon as our application goes in.
okay. So The one portion of this that asks for the veterinarian technician for routine medical care to training of staff, would it be accurate to say that we're just going to be training the staff that are one of these designees on George Gray's permit? Because those are the only folks that are going to be able to touch a turtle, right? I mean, we can't train folks that aren't listed on that already.
Our permit for holding sea turtles for educational purposes will be a separate permit from George Gray's. It will have nothing to do with George Gray's permit.
Okay.
It will be a permit that will be under individual, we'll have however many individuals we're going to have on that permit, and it will be under the Sea Turtle Conservation Center with the people listed on that permit. It will not have to do with George Gray's permit.
When you applied for the permit or the grant, the 43,915, it had a date of December 2014 that we were looking to get these funds to do these various different activities. And I realized some of these are shared. We had some social media, we had the field guides, we had the kayaks, we had the veterinarian technician, we had the volunteer coordinator, the well. If you knew that you weren't going to be open by the end of the year, why would you have requested funds for things like the social media or things like the veterinarian technician if you knew you weren't going to be open in time? It just seems like that would have been one that said, look, we've got the construction going on. We know it takes 90 days for the permit. We're going to ask for these things that we know we can execute on now. And then when we get that, then we'll come back and ask for the balance. I'm just trying to get an understanding on what the reason was for that.
Okay.
And then I'll bring this in for landing, Mr. Chairman.
If, at that point, when we partnered with the Marine Sanctuary to write this funding request, we did not know that we would not be open by December. That's why we put those dates in. We were going along with how the progress of the center was going, and this is what we were estimating. It was only an estimate. That's all you can do in construction. I think you all found that out with the bathrooms in the Navarre Park. You don't always complete it when you're supposed to complete it, and you also find out that you don't always come in right at your budget level. Can go a little higher, can go a little lower. Okay, and that's what happened with this. Part of the uniqueness, I'm going to say, of our project and this center is, Mr. Walker, you said this in one of the meetings, we had a lot of volunteers. We had support from the Red Horse Squadron, from Hurlburt Field. We had volunteer contractors. We had Navarre Drywall, who did all of the drywall for pro bono for us. So we had things that, even though we really did the best we could do with staying local. We wanted to use local people in our community to help with this project, and we were very fortunate we were able to do that. However, when you're getting discounted prices, free labor, volunteers, you're not always at the top of the list because people have to make a living for their families, and we understood that. And things came up, and things got a little behind schedule. Had we known that was going to happen, the dates on this would have been different.
And first of all, I want to say on the record here that I believe you to be a high integrity individual. And I believe that every one of the dollars that you have spent on this project, you have done your level best to be diligent and get the best possible pricing for the taxpayers on this project. That said, I think you're kind of helping make the argument for me for some of the concerns that I have had since taking office on how bed tax collections have been appropriated, and that the scope of the project can change pretty substantially without requiring that group to come back before this board or the TDC to provide any type of an amendment to let them know that we're now going to be using the funds for this purpose instead of our original purpose. We started out as a rehab rescue facility. I've looked at the original submittals of the drawings of the building. We're going to be doing first aid here and rescue here, and we're not doing that anymore. I've heard that the reason that we're not doing that anymore is because Fish and Wildlife has said that they're not going to support an additional rehab and rescue facility this close to the Gulfarium, that they're actually looking to expand the Gulfarium's operation, and that they offered up as a alternative would be for this facility to be used as an opportunity to house non-releasable turtles. And that's what caused you guys to change gears and go in a different direction. I'm in support of that. I think it's going to be great to have that educational component and be able to teach kids and those that are visiting here. We can argue about what the return on investment is going to ultimately be on the 260+ thousand that we're putting out. My issues are that we are allocating funding without a defined scope, and we're unable to keep, for whatever reason, clear accounting of those records to where at any time, within a reasonable amount of time, the questions that I asked could easily be answered. And so if all I need to, I feel hopefully satisfy not only myself but the members of the board, would be just the breakdown on the different buckets of funding related to this last grant award. And that can't come from Jane. That can only come from you, because your group submitted the grant, your group submitted the totals in these respective buckets that you wanted for the grant, your group submits the invoices to pay for these, so your group should be able to say, we had $5,200, this went toward the kayaks, boom, that one's off the list. Okay, we had $4,000 for volunteer coordinator or whatever it is. We have $80 left in the balance. That should come from your group back to the county, not from the county back the other way. Would you agree?
Yes, and I would also like to, since we're at this point in this meeting, point out a review of some of the emails in the meetings. Jane and I have worked closely since December 2nd's meeting. Okay, at that time, we had our budget meeting. You were there, Mr. Walker was there, Tony Gamillion was there, Jane was there, and I was there. We knew what you wanted, and on the 4th, Jane sent you what had been paid out at that point. So you did, it wasn't 2 weeks later that you got the information, it was on December the 4th. I have emails. And then on the 17th, December 17th, you sent me another email that said you hadn't received what you had requested, but you had received what you had requested.
Had I received the
other
timeline
than-
yet, Ms. Holmes? No. And the numbers that I received from Jane have changed 2 times, twice since then. As late as last week, when I got these numbers at midnight on Wednesday when I was at the FACT conference, I get one set of numbers from Jane reflecting a negative balance of $1,136 in the $60,000 grant, only to get a subsequent email from you with different numbers reflecting that at a 0 balance because we took funds from an architect from 2013, and instead of having those funds go totally toward the one grant, they got switched over to the other. We can talk email threads and timelines all day long. The basic questions that I asked were not being answered, and that's what started to raise the suspicion. The timeline can only be provided by your group, and the costs associated with that timeline could only be provided by your group. And the timeline that you provided was nothing more than a list of items that showed that they were going to be completed in February with no costs associated with those items, as was reasonably requested, and no grant funding that those items were supposed to be applied toward. So no, the questions weren't answered. And that's what brought the frustration. And quite frankly, I'm getting incredibly frustrated with this being made to look as though I'm singling out your organization. I waited 6.5 months, and I have yet to receive the information that was requested. And yet everyone else that I requested that information from to get a clear accounting, they provided it within a week. How do you explain that?
Okay, first of all, I would like to address the chairman, and I would like to bring this up. If I am not allowed to have the floor and continue when I'm talking without being interrupted as a professional courtesy, I will remove myself from the podium right now. I will get in contact with everybody on this board and make a meeting separately to explain this. But I believe it's a professional courtesy when you have the floor to not be interrupted and allow me to finish what I'm trying to clarify, more than for Commissioner Williamson, for the public, for our supporters, for our military, and for the rest of the people that are sitting on this board. Thank you. So on December 24th, I'm going to continue here because this timeline is important. I received a very unprofessional and condescending email in reference to the timeline. I almost didn't respond to it because I didn't expect that from a county commissioner, but I did, and I replied that I would forward the email to Henry Tyler for the timeline information he was requesting. Then on the 25th, timeline and expenses were provided by Mr. Tyler. Keep in mind, please, that this is the Christmas vacation. There are a lot of people out of the office. There are a lot of people going. I had a family crisis that I was dealing with at the time that I was not checking my emails every single day. So was this something that was of such a high priority, it needed a 24-hour turnaround? I don't know. In my mind, at that time, it was not. But we did continue on. Then on December 25th, I responded to another email from Commissioner Williamson answering all the questions except a question that he had asked in reference to the Marine Sanctuary money of $64,000. I had nothing to do with that. I knew nothing about it, and I was not going to address it. However, I did suggest that Mike and Nancy Sandler be invited to a meeting so that they could address it and ask when he would be available. He never responded, by email or by phone. On December 30th, Jane Bell, Shannon Ogletree, Julie Morgan, and I met to complete financials that Commissioner Williamson had requested, and that was submitted to him on January 2nd. At that time, everything was in order and everything was balanced. On January 7th, I met with Jane again. We updated the funding. It was sent to Mr. Walker and myself. However, I will say the carryover balance on the 43,915 was a little confusing because it was a joint grant. There was no misappropriations. The staff here, the staff in the budget, Mr. Walker, everybody's here to ensure the success of the commissioners. They didn't do anything wrong. The thing was, everything was confused. When the TDC came underneath the county, a lot of changes happened. And that included coding. And that's what we were dealing with. It was a coding issue with appropriate accounts. That's it. It wasn't a huge vortex tornado of misappropriations of funding and suspicion, okay? To clarify that. Jane, myself, and Karen Wheeler have worked closely. In between December and, well, actually, all the way through April, we had meetings every month, once a month, scheduled meetings to go over everything, to ensure invoices she had received, because some of the invoices were actually emailed. So I wanted to make sure that email didn't go to spam. We always made sure the invoices were received. She made sure they were coded correctly. If there were any questions, they always would ask us, and we would make sure that we also knew what pot of money they were coming out of, okay? So on February 18th, I met with Jane again. We updated the budget. The budget was still under budget in all three areas. On March the 10th, met with Jane again, updated budget, again, under budget in all three areas. April 13th, met with Jane to go over all of the invoices to ensure that all of the invoices had been submitted correctly, and were accurately coded. They were. Jane did an updated budget. May 22nd, Jane and I went over invoices again. She did some moving to areas that was appropriated funding and was corrected, and updated the budget. So from December to May, we met once a week. We had scheduled meetings, and we had impromptu meetings. When any questions would come up, these guys were awesome in contacting me and saying, hey, I have a question about this invoice. Can we talk about it? Let's make sure it's coming out of the right pot of money. So we did that all the way. Nothing was ever done inappropriately or wrong, and that's the issue that I have. I have a problem with collateral damage. I have a problem with people that are our supporters. I have a problem with our military that have supported us, and people that have done memorial funds in memory of their loved ones, that this may not have really damaged us in any way. In fact, I'll share with you that since this broke, we've gotten $4,200 in donations. But the point is, even though it was not actually said he's singling us out or doing this. And I like due diligence, I'm all about it, but due diligence includes due diligence. Check it all out. Make sure you've got your facts right. Don't pull one thing or one side of the story. Get it all together and present it so that it is accurate. And that's what I've done in this. And Jane has done it at her level, Karen has done it at her level, and you can go any place and they can pull the invoices and get you what you need. And that's, you know, that's basically what it's all about, is being truthful about stuff, getting both sides of the story, and not just doing one side.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized? Thank you. Can you read the condescending email that you referred to, please, so I can know what I'm talking about here?
Sure can. Excuse me, I got one. And he also sent a very pleasant note to me dated the 3rd December, which I made copies of, saying how he thanked us for being so responsible with the funds given to us.
And have reiterated same this morning.
Pardon me?
And I've reiterated the same this morning.
Okay, let's see, this was, hang on, I've got a lot of emails here. Give me 1 minute, they're in chronological order.
If I could, you mentioned in your comment that you had responded back, or that Henry had responded back with the timeline and expenses. I received the timeline. I don't recall receiving a timeline with associated costs associated with the timeline and each one of those items. Did send the timeline that said, this is what we're working on, this will be done by February, what have you, but I don't recall seeing the costs with each one of those. The reason that would be important is because it gives us an understanding of, it gives me a clear understanding of, we allocated 165, we've spent 150, we got 15 left. That's why I was asking for those very standard, very reasonable questions.
Yeah, we have no objection to you asking anything you want, you need, but my objection, and I was the guy that got blessed with building this thing, is asking the right people. If the county budget office and financial department doesn't know what funds were appropriated when or how or whatever, that's fine. We don't have a financial thing. I have a job cost. I can tell you to the penny how much is spent, how much is not spent, but committed. I could care less about spent. That's an accounting deal. I'm a committed guy. They committed X number of dollars. I didn't have it in my budget to finish building the building. So my advice to the board, to our board, the Turtle Board, was where they stood on committed cost. We committed to the well drilling episode 3 months before it was actually constructed. That was $6,500. We didn't have any more to spend. Y'all's office didn't pay that bill till sometime later. And things like comments that were made in the last Monday meeting, I believe. I think you had an invoice and you said this is Aqua Pool. They're requesting their 3rd payment. And by the way, I just hear this by the newspapers. Nobody from this board has advised me that our funds have been cut off, or this board that our funds have been cut off. All we hear is what's in the newspaper. I think it would have been very appropriate for somebody to pick up the phone and say, hey guys, y'all quit spending money down there. We're not paying any more bills. But that didn't happen, but that's neither here nor there. The invoice that you had from Aqua Pool, I can't quote you direct, but you said, here's their 3rd invoice. They want $8,135, and these people don't have but $7,000 in their budget. You remember that?
Said they had $76.39 remaining to spend in the grant award.
Do you remember waiving the invoice and say you got an invoice
I
from
remember referring to this binder.
That
Yeah.
invoice was paid on February the 23rd. Already committed, already spent. That money was already out of this budget. That's what Janie tried to speak up and say, and your comment was, well, you know what your comments were. And comments like that, Mr. Williamson, hurt our fundraising efforts. It hurts a lot of things because we get a lot of phone calls. What are you guys doing? Why is this invoice not paid?
And don't you think that it would have been, if this was a couple of weeks
I think
into it would have been absolutely, the punishment would not have fit the crime. There would have been no reason to go to that level. That's why I called a meeting behind the scenes, and I appreciate it, but I've been recognized now. And from December to May, I didn't have any communication, nor did I have an email knowing that you were having regular meetings with them and that everything was up to date. The stuff that you referred to here, this is the accounting that was done the first time, and this is the information that was provided to me.
On January the 4th?
Yeah,
December the 4th?
and so you can understand why, when I look at it and see here that was provided, the balance is 7659. This is the information that after y'all met and provided this back to me, then we have a budget amendment at last Monday's meeting asking for more money than we have in the grant award. So you can hopefully understand why I would start asking even more questions. First of all, any contact that's been made between you or your board has been initiated by me, not the other way around. You talk about communication. Any communication that's been initiated has been initiated by me, asking these questions. And when it comes to the balance being accurate and getting the facts straight, that's the whole reason I started asking these questions, is because the taxpayers in Santa Rosa County deserve to have the facts straight. And that has to be a combined team effort between the folks that requested the grant funding and are spending the money and turning in the invoices, and the folks here in Santa Rosa County staff that are recording those invoices. As far as the coding changes, that happened when I made this suggestion to our Office of Management and Budget that we set up specific coding buckets for these 3 separate grants. Because in the time that I'd taken office, my District 4 rec account had changed totals 3 different times. I'm not going to say that this in any way goes to the level of what happened to our next door neighbors, but you can certainly understand my concern when I start seeing what happened to Okaloosa County with the allocation of TDC dollars. And I'm not saying that that's anything that's happened here, but when I'm asking these very reasonable questions and it's taking month after month with no response from you unless I email you and ask for an update, unless I email you and ask for a follow-up, then I get communication back. At no time did it seem like I should be communicating with anyone other than the executive director of the Turtle Center, not the board, you, or anybody else. The executive director, Ms. Holmes, is the one that had requested the money on behalf of the Turtle Center. Ms. Holmes was the one that was meeting with and trying to figure out the finances. Why would I then circumvent Ms. Holmes and start talking to the board or anyone else when at no time was that even recommended to me? I don't think we're going to get anything settled today. I know that the District 1 Commissioner had requested that you come here to give your side of the story. I wasn't aware that anybody was keeping you from giving your side of the story before that. I'm still waiting on the allocation of the 43,915 and the individual grant funding requests that were made. Once that information is provided, then I believe I will have a clear accounting of the funds that have been allocated, which was all I asked for 7 months ago. And all the rest of this is just road noise. If this was meant to be answered, then it could have very easily been answered. And communication is a two-way street, Ms. Holmes. And I have tried my level best to communicate with your group. And as I said, the only communication that has come has been initiated by me. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I need to clarify something, okay? The
Ms.
email.
Holmes, Ms. Holmes,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner J.R. Whipps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through the chair to the budget director, Ms. Bell, just for clarification, the $165,000 grant from the District 4 funds, the balance is $10,000, excuse me,
No.
the balance is $8,624. The $43,915 TDC grant, the balance is $10,709. The $60,000 grant from the TDC showed a negative balance of $1,136. That $1,136 was paid from the District 4 grant of $165 to make that a zero balance now. So the balance
That's
that we're
right.
showing for the $165 should be less $1,136.
That's exactly right, $7,748, I believe.
Okay. Is there any, we suspended that there would be any more, I guess, checks cut, or is there anything happen at the Turtle Center that we're going to keep from happening, or any deadlines that we're going to make not happen by continuing suspension of this?
Absolutely not. We would have liked the courtesy to know that y'all we're not going to pay any more bills, but we can finish what we've got to do down there, whether y'all renege on this commitment you made or not.
To Commissioner Williamson, I know that you've asked for an expenditure sheet on the $43,915, that grant from the TDC. Is that something that y'all feel confident that you could get to the commissioner before the Thursday meeting? Because we're going to have to have something moved to a Thursday meeting to remove the suspension of the funds, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't prepared to make a motion. I didn't add anything to the agenda to that effect. So I was not prepared to lift any suspension of payment or call for any action on Thursday when I'm still waiting on a clear accounting of the numbers. And just so the District 1 Commissioner is aware, the reason you have two different totals here, money was allocated toward District 4 rec funds. The $10,500 for the architect was paid in September of 2013. It's my understanding that the District 4 rec fund allocation of $165 came after that. So this is an after-the-fact recoding of expenses when we see that we've spent more than we have in the account, so now we're going to go ahead and shift money from one over to the other, which I've already said I'm fine with. You want to do that without asking for an amendment, I get it. It's all going for the building. But that's why we have the two different totals. You wanted to have an update, which they have provided, but I have still yet to review all of the numbers, and I've still yet to receive a breakdown on the 43,915. So until I get that and I have an opportunity to review it, I'm not prepared to move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you feel sufficient if they got that to you in a timely manner that we could bring this back to the board in a couple weeks and be done with, move on with this project?
It was my intention to have this be on the first set of July meetings. Again, when we had the last meeting, it was said at the last meeting by Ms. Bell that she had the numbers and that would provide those to me. I did not receive those numbers until Tuesday from Mr. Walker of this past week, and then received the additional information on Wednesday. So I will definitely be ready to bring this back to the board the first set of July meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Williamson or Commissioner Williamson. And I appreciate y'all coming up and giving us kind of an overview. It makes me feel more comfortable with the situation here on both sides of the story, and then we can all work together on getting this thing resolved and getting some more turtles saved. But thank you so much for your effort. Commissioner Williamson, I thank you for your due diligence, and hopefully we can put this to bed in the first July meeting.
Absolutely. I had an opportunity to talk to the board president, Ms. Hollerman, reached out and called her while I was out of town and told her the same, that I thought it would have been our best interest to allow me to get all of the numbers, review those numbers, and then we could come forward and maybe in more of a positive frame of mind and put forward this review and show the clear accounting. But we are where we are now, and I think I'll have the numbers put together by next meeting.
Okay. May I speak again, please? Thank
Yes,
you.
Ms. Holmes, go ahead. Wrap up your presentation.
Pardon me?
You can wrap up your presentation.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm gonna skip the email unless you all want me to read that email. But Jane, did we not talk on Friday in reference to the breakdown of that 43,915?
We
How
did.
we divided it out?
We did.
Okay. And did Commissioner Williamson get how we talked about how it was divided between the Marine Sanctuary and us? Sorry. How it was divided between us and the Marine Sanctuary?
Yes, I inserted a column which the other commissioners didn't see, but some of those expenditures were clearly identified, and then there were others that were joint. I think actually I misspoke. You all did get, I did let you all know. You saw those.
Yes,
It says either joint or it says Turtle Center.
correct.
Right. Since it has specific buckets of funding, it shouldn't need to say joint. It should just say that it's going toward these specific buckets of funding that your group submitted. So we have the breakdown in there. It should be pretty simple to just say this for the social media, for example. It should be very easy to match up the coding, but we can't do that because that would provide an opportunity for a mistake. Your group has to tell us, we had $5,200 for kayaks, this is the expense this is the invoice that we're matching up with that check. To me, from a business standpoint, this has been incredibly frustrating, and I know it has been for y'all, because to me, it seems pretty simple. You take invoices and you match them up with canceled checks, and it should go pretty quickly.
That's
and then
exactly
you
what
would
was-
know what is left in the balance of each of these accounts.
That's exactly what was done, and still is being done. I mean, I don't know how else to address it.
It's easy
Okay.
to say that, but that information hasn't been provided to this board yet, Henry. It hasn't. I mean, what has been submitted is not matching up with, for whatever reason, and the numbers have changed several times. You would think that it would be that easy, but it just, that's not the reality of what has been provided thus far.
Okay. And I don't think we're going to answer all of those questions this morning.
we're not.
But we certainly know what questions are out there. So if you could work over the next 2 weeks before the first meeting in July, try to get whatever information to Commissioner Williamson that he needs to satisfy himself that everything is in order, and then he can bring that back to the board first meeting in July and brief us up. And then you can continue on doing great things out there on Navarre Beach. The Turtle Center is an important part of the vision for the future out on Navarre Beach, the ecotourism that we all strive for, and we appreciate your efforts out there.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Push the speak button, please.
It's been a while, huh? I just wanted to speak, I guess, directly and indirectly to the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Conservation.
Please state your name for the record,
Oh,
please.
pardon. Yvonne Harper, 7375 Olympia Street, Navarre, Florida. I think it's very important to acknowledge that what Commissioner Williamson is doing is correct. I think it's very important to have a clear accounting of funds. And I understand that he has stated, and I take him at his word, that it's not personal. But as was stated at the last set of meetings, it is very important. We should be careful in making inferences of wrongdoing. And I think that's what was done with the Monday and Thursday last set of meetings, is that it was inferred that somehow there was a misappropriation of funds, and I don't think that was the intent, but that is definitely how it could be perceived. And also with the money, Navarre Beach Sea Turtle is not the only nonprofit organization to receive money in Navarre. The YMCA has received more than $300,000 in county funds. The Navarre Youth Sports Association, NYSA, has received thousands of dollars in county funds. And the Marine Science Center has received thousands of dollars in county funds. And I would like to see a clear, detailed accounting that has been requested of the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Center of these organizations as well. Because while I accept that it's not personal, I have not seen this type of detailed question and wanting to account for every single dollar and timeline of these other organizations who have received much, much more than the Navarre Beach Sea Turtle Center. So I thank Mr. Williamson for wanting to ensure that the funds are spent correctly, but I do think it's important to apply the same standard to all the organizations in Navarre. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning, Scott.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Williamson.
while he's coming up, as I said on Monday, as I said again on Thursday, as I said here again this morning, have requested that information, and that information was readily provided from those other groups that were just mentioned.
Scott Kemp, 5525 Hummingbird Court, Gulf Breeze, Florida. Real quick, sir. As you know, I've been tracking this and watching this as a taxpayer, and we got 4 different buckets of money out there that this money's been appropriated. I think these folks have said the last $70,000 that are out there they're not going to need. What I would like to see is that is taxpayer money. If they don't need it, let's revert it back to the general fund or wherever and move forward. I do also thank Commissioner Rob Williamson and all of you, because every time you guys give out $1, it should be accounted for. It's our money. It's not your money. And I hate to sound like somebody else that comes up here, but, we are, and for all of us, we don't care about which bucket of money it comes from. We just know we all pay taxes. And sure, tourist development gets a lot of theirs from the tourist, and that's great. But, from what we're hearing now, that, I think it's time to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, so there will be no action on this Thursday. We will have this back on the agenda in a couple of weeks. Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay. We'll move on.